Namanda, namanda, namanda. Okay, thank you, everyone. In our usual schedule, last week, our graduation service would have been our last service, kind of the season of the school year, right? And this week we'd be getting ready for, this weekend, getting ready for Bazaar. And then next weekend would be the Bazaar. And then the weekend after that would be recovering from Bazaar. And so that's why normally we only had the one service in June. But since we're not having the Bazaar, I thought that I would keep doing Dharma messages. Not so much for Dharma school and the kids, but more for adults, kind of. And so a theme that I kind of want to look at maybe for the rest of the month, if not the whole summer, not sure yet, but it's what I'd like to call Buddhist values. Buddhist values, right? What are our values as Buddhists? And one way we can kind of think about this is, a lot of times religion is thought of as belief. And what do you believe? What in your religion do you believe? And with Christianity kind of as the default often in this kind of way of thinking, and then faith becomes the main thing. But for Buddhism, I think you can ask as to a Buddhist, what do you believe? But then we also have to ask, what do you do? Right? And so we kind of start to see this, right? What do I think? What do I believe? Right? What's the theory behind everything? Or is there just faith and belief in something? But then also, what do I do? How do I act? Right? And so that's one way to kind of think about religion too. Sometimes they talk about like orthodoxy is proper belief or proper faith, and then orthopraxy is proper practice. And different religions have different thoughts on all this. And so I think, but though Buddhism has very distinctive kind of thoughts. But another thing that we really do need to ask too is, which Buddhists are you talking about? Which Buddhism are you talking about? Which Buddhists are you asking? Right? And so I'm really into Buddhism and, all different kinds of Buddhism. And there are some things that you may find as kind of constants throughout different kinds of Buddhism. But Jodo Shinshu is also very different. And so I think it's really important to understand that. And so I can't, I'll make some general remarks, but I think it's really important to know too that what I believe and what I do as Jodo Shinshu Buddhist might be different than a Zen Buddhist or someone who practices Tibetan Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism, right? Or, all these different schools and that kind of thing. So, thinking about what do Buddhists believe, I think there's a couple different ways to think about that too. So each time I'm kind of dividing into two, right? But as far as what do Buddhists believe, one I think is kind of doctrinal, right? Doctrine, theory, philosophy even, right? And so one that we're very familiar with is impermanence. What do you believe as a Buddhist? Well, I believe that things are always changing, right? That there's constant change, and that, nothing lasts forever, no one lives forever, right? So impermanence is one kind of doctrinal belief that I think many Buddhists hold. Another one, interdependence, right? This idea that all things are interconnected. Now that interconnection might affect what I do, right? My actions are connected to my beliefs. And so it's not necessarily this or that. I think we, just like interdependence or interconnectedness itself, right? These are connected. But these are these kind of doctrinal ideas of Buddhism that maybe we could say as a Buddhist, I believe this. Another one that a Buddhist might answer with is emptiness. All things are empty of inherent existence. This is an area where not all Buddhists believe that, or not all Buddhists would emphasize that. Theravada Buddhism, that might not be on the radar. It really is more of a Mahayana Buddhist idea, although you can find it in Theravada. But that's another place where maybe it's going to be different depending who you ask. I myself believe in emptiness, but it's not emphasized in Jodo Shinshu particularly. So if you were to ask the Sangha here at Buddhist Church of Oakland, what do you believe? I doubt that emptiness would be at the top of the list of responses. So that's one way to think about what do Buddhists believe, right? These doctrinal kind of answers, philosophical, theoretical tenets or beliefs about reality. What is going on? Why is the world the way it is? Well, or what is the world really like? Impermanent, ever-changing, but also interconnected, but also empty of inherent existence. Things only exist in relation to other things. Now, another way that I think we can think about what do Buddhists believe is more in the sense of what I said before, values. Maybe ideals is another way to put it, right? In Buddhism, what is the ideal way to be? And so these values are what I'd like to kind of try and focus on for the next few weeks. The ones that pop into my mind instantly are kindness, compassion, and equality. So let's look at equality first, maybe. One aspect of equality that I think we can find in Buddhism is the idea of Buddhism being a universal religion, right? And so Buddhism is not only for certain people, it's not only for a certain race, it's not only for a certain nation, it's not only spoken in one language, right? That this idea of a universal religion open to anyone. And I think that that's one area that we can find this equality in Buddhism. It's also said that Shakyamuni Buddha in ancient India rejected the caste system. Right, the caste system is found in India today. Whether it's found in the current form back 2,500 years ago, maybe not. But there were definitely ideas of these different kind of castes. They're like classes of society, but you're born into it. It's not like America where anybody can become part of the rich group, right? No, if you're born Brahmin, the kind of priestly class, then that's your family, right? If you are in the kingly warrior caste, that's it. That's your family is that, and unquestioned. Well, questioned by Shakyamuni, right? That Shakyamuni denied that system, right? Shakyamuni denied that people have this essential class built into them, and that anyone could join the Sangha, anyone could attain awakening. They didn't have to wait until a future rebirth when they're born into a different caste. Right, and so that's definitely another idea or another area where we can see this equality in Buddhism. Thinking about compassion, I was looking through my Collected Works of Shinran. Some of you have this book. I hope you've taken the shrink wrap off, and mine's got kind of wrap on it, but it's not shrink wrap. I opened it. It's just to protect the paper cover. But if you have it, you can turn to page 456. You can find this stuff online too. Maybe I'll try to, there's a website called shinranworks.com that has this entire book online, and maybe I can try and find that link and stick it in there. But page 456, this is Shinran writing about a poem by a Chinese master, Zhu Min. And let me read that. That Buddha in the causal stage made the universal vow. When beings hear my name and think on me, I will come to welcome each of them, not discriminating at all between the poor and the rich and well-born, not discriminating between the inferior and the highly gifted, not choosing the learned and those upholding pure precepts, nor rejecting those who break precepts and whose evil karma is profound. Solely making beings turn about and abundantly say the nembutsu, I can make bits of rubble change into gold. So this passage is a poem that Shinran seems to have really liked. That Buddha refers to Amida Buddha, so it's kind of a neat section where he gives the poem, and then he explains it, and it looks funny sometimes because it kind of repeats itself sometimes. Name refers to the name, right? And you're like, what? Of course it does, right? But the first part in italics is Chinese, and then he's explaining it in Japanese. So they put both into English. So sometimes it looks funny, but that's what's going on here. So that Buddha refers to Amida Buddha. In the causal stage indicates the time when Amida Buddha was Bodhisattva Dharmakara. Universal means wide, to spread. Bhikshu Dharmakara established the supreme, unexcelled vow and spread it widely. So that kind of thing, right, that he's explaining this passage. And so this thing about not discriminating at all between the poor and the rich and wellborn. Not discriminating means not choosing, not rejecting. Poor means impoverished and in need. At all is for emphasis, meaning not at all. It also means with and to lead. Rich and wellborn indicates the wealthy and people of rank. Thus, without in the least differentiating among such people, Amida leads each and every person to the Pure Land. And then, there's these other, between the inferior and the highly gifted, those whose knowledge is shallow, limited, and slight, and those with great ability for learning. Amida Buddha doesn't make these distinctions and doesn't reject those who have of shallow knowledge. Right? Not choosing the learned and those who uphold pure precepts. So he also doesn't, Amida Buddha doesn't make a distinction between monks and lay people. Right? So here I think this is just a nice, clear presentation of Amida Buddha as accepting everyone, not distinguishing, not discriminating. Right? And so, and one of the really interesting part is here, solely making beings turn about and abundantly say the nembutsu, I can make bits of rubble change into gold. Right? That passage is what Shinran seems to like, and one of my teachers, Tai Tetsu Unno, they called a book called Bits of Rubble Turn into Gold. That's from here. That's this passage. So on 459 is where he talks about it in more detail. Really interesting. He's saying there's these various kinds of people, diverse kinds of people, ignorant beings, good or evil. Right? And when such shackled, foolish beings, the lowly who are hunters and peddlers, thus wholly entrust themselves to the name embodying great wisdom, the inconceivable vow of the Buddha of unhindered light, then while burdened as they are with blind passions, they attain the supreme nirvana. Shackled describes us, who are bound by all our various blind passions. So Shinran sees himself not as a great master, but as a foolish being. Blind passions refers to pains which torment the body and afflictions which distress the heart and mind, like the three poisons. The hunter is one who slaughters many kinds of living things. This is the huntsman. The peddler is one who buys and sells things. This is the trader. So thinking medieval Japan, actually hunters, fishermen were looked down on. People ate the meat probably, but they didn't want to kill the thing themselves. They saw that as like a karmically evil act. So I think that in Shinran's time, it seems these people were socially downtrodden, right? Were looked down on, discriminated against. And then it's kind of interesting with the peddler too, one who buys and sells things. Later on, kind of after Renyo's time, getting into Edo period, merchants become more and more powerful. But at this time, people who sold things, right, were, low level. They weren't considered of a higher social status, right? They were considered lower social status. So Shinran says they are called low, the hunters and peddlers. Such peddlers, hunters, and others are none other than we, who are like stones and tiles and pebbles. Right? So here you can see Shinran identifying with these groups of people who were discriminated against, right? Who were considered low level socially. And then I can make bits of rubble change into gold, right? So those us, the hunters, peddlers, right? Us, those like us, we're like stones and tiles and pebbles. So if you think of a next to a temple, kind of like the tiles up on our temple, I think in medieval Japan, there would have been all this like dirt and rocks and rubble and like broken tiles kind of around the edges of buildings, right? Just from age. They didn't have cherry pickers to go up there and fix it easily and that kind of thing. And so he says, this is a metaphor, right? That we're like these we're not a nice, shining, brand new, spiffy tile, right? We're like a broken one, just in a pile on the ground, in the dirt, right? But he says, this is a metaphor that Buddha can make bits of rubble change into gold. When we entrust ourselves to the Tathagata's primal vow, we who are like bits of tile and pebbles are turned into gold. Peddlers and hunters who are like stones and tiles and pebbles are grasped and never abandoned by the Tathagata's light. Know that this comes about solely through true Shinjin. We speak of the light that grasps us because we are taken into the heart of the Buddha of unhindered light. Thus, Shinjin is said to be like a vajra, this indestructible substance. And so this kind of broken stuff, right, damaged, Buddha can turn it into gold, right? Transformed by Buddha's wisdom and compassion. So, this compassion of the Buddha that grasps all beings is a compassion of equality, right? Not accepting some, rejecting others, right? Not based on race or class, social class, or gender, right? Or anything, sexual preference, anything, right? Buddha accepts all. Now, so those are a couple of things that I think I believe as a Buddhist, and I consider those values, right? These values that I think are kind of interconnected of compassion and equality. Right? And so this compassion of the Buddha, even if now that's one thing, right? Should I try to be compassionate like the Buddha? In one sense, yes. I really believe that this is our ideal. That's why I like to call these ideals too, right? I believe that our ideals as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists are the wisdom and compassion ultimately of the Buddha. And this wisdom and compassion is all embracing, right? It's a wisdom of non-discrimination, right? It's compassion of equality. And so that's where I see this equality also as an ideal for us. But what do we do? Right? Then we get into the question of what, as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, could we do? And I don't want to talk for too much longer, but the basic answer, one, is we say nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. We recite that. Whether we recite it at temple or on video, after I say it, you say it, right? Ideally, though, it's spontaneous, but it's also connected to self-reflection. That to me, this is where one of our fundamental practices, things that we do as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, really is self-reflection. So if I try to be compassionate, don't be like, yeah, I was really compassionate, right? Try to help, but be willing to think back, and look, was that really compassionate? Or if we're not even trying to be compassionate, we're just being mean, right? To look and be like, whoa, I was really mean there. Was that necessary? That wasn't cool, right? That we can, whatever we do. Now it doesn't mean don't be mean, only be good. I think Shinran understands he can't do that. He can't follow that injunction to only be good and not be mean or evil or bad, right? He can't follow that. And yet, it doesn't mean, therefore, it's okay to be bad. Right? I'm going to have to do this next time. This is really hard. This is like the deep difficulty of Jodo Shinshu ethics. And there's no injunction, be a good person. It's really more realize how I'm not a good person and reflect on that. And realize, though, that even though maybe I'm not a good person, Amida Buddha accepts me as I am. Right? That this universal wisdom and compassion of non-discrimination accepts me as I am. But then accepted as I am, do I just stay the same and keep being mean or keep just not thinking? Or does something happen? Right? Is there some kind of transformation where I actually, I think ideally, I would hope, I would love to be able to channel the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha, right? And actualize that, manifest it. That's asking a lot. I don't know. Something to think about. And I kind of want to wrap it up just because I don't want to, I've already talked almost 20 minutes. And so I hope to keep this up. And I'm going to try to address, maybe it raises more questions than it answers, right? But I'd like to keep this going for at least a few more weeks. So why don't we conclude? I'll read this passage again by Tzu Min, and so you can join me in Gassho if you wish. That Buddha in the causal stage made the universal vow. When beings hear my name and think on me, I will come to welcome each of them, not discriminating at all between the poor and the rich and wellborn, not discriminating between the inferior and the highly gifted, not choosing the learned and those upholding pure precepts, nor rejecting those who break precepts and whose evil karma is profound. Solely making beings turn about and abundantly say the nembutsu, I can make bits of rubble change into gold. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Namanda.